So I remember going into middle school, and it was not a pretty sight. I was like 5'2", and probably less than that. I was probably less than that, because I was 5'2" going into high school. So I wish I was joking, but I'm not. So I had to have been 4 foot something, and my very first day of what they had as middle school where I was a brand new kid in a new school. We just moved across town, and I threw up on my desk very first day of school. And the worst part is that there was a girl sitting right across from me. Her name was Erin, and she was so cute. And she was brand new at the school too. So on her first day of a new school, a kid threw up on her desk as well. So as much as I tell this story, I'm sure she tells the story from a very different perspective. And I found out later, some of you may know the Stumney family. Chase Stumney, who I believe he's going to be a sophomore, junior in college, something like that. He told me that she was still telling that story whenever he was going through 5th grade as well. He had the same teacher as I did. I was so anxious. I had so much fear built up in me, and I have no clue why. It was really just the unknown, I think. And it was just completely built up in me. There was nothing around that I really had to be afraid of. Everybody was in the same boat that I was in. But I think about the middle schoolers that are getting ready to start. They just had a summer, their first summer in the youth group. I think about the freshmen that are getting ready to start high school. Let me tell you about my first day of high school. Like I said, I was 5'2" and very, very, scrawny, and I actually played on the soccer team because my coach probably felt sorry for me and wanted me to have a few friends before I started high school. But first day of high school, walking down the hallway, and we had so many buildings. I went over to school in Belleville. So many buildings, like building A through S, I think. Isn't that right, Christy? Something like that. I mean, it seemed much bigger than it probably was. And so I started walking, and I wasn't quite as nervous. I was actually feeling kind of confident. Sure enough, as soon as that thought went through my mind, a kid ran through and slapped all the books out of my hand, and they went everywhere. Papers went everywhere. Thankfully, randomly, the nose tackle for our football team was right there, and he grew up next to my grandma. And so he knew me and kind of grabbed the guy and said, pick those books up for him. So I was really thankful for that. But I felt like I had this constant sense of what's going to happen next. How many of you guys have ever had that fear in your life? Maybe not the first day. Anybody had first day fears? I know some of you are starting. Any teachers starting their first day of teaching this week or last week? Anybody? No? Oh, yeah? Dina, you are? Starting Tuesday? Yeah. So it is. But anyways, how many of you have ever had that fear just consume you? The fear of what's going to happen next. The fear of just unsurety. My fears grew as I got older. I used to fear what I wore. Obviously, I don't fear that much anymore. My wife will tell you I will put on, as long as it's not torn up, I'll wear whatever I want to church, to school, wherever I'm going. So I don't fear that anymore. I don't care what people think about what I wear, but man, I used to. And if my hair didn't look the right way, I felt like I was, now I wish I had hair, but I just don't care about those things anymore. My fears have changed. Now it's, they've kind of graduated. As I went through college, it was, am I going to meet a girl? I met a girl. Am I going to graduate after my first semester? My dad had that same question of me. And I graduated. Am I going to get a job? I got a job. And then after I got a job, are we going to have a house? Are we going to be able to afford to get a house? And all through those things, God always took care of us. And then it became something different of, paying bills and making sure that we had all the things that we needed as a family. And then June 5th happened, June 5th. June 7th, 2005 happened, and Kennedy was born. And my fears took a drastic turn, right? And now all my fears were about my competency as a father, my ability to lead a family, my ability to help create a love for God in somebody else. See, all my years as a youth minister and as a children's minister, I felt that, but I knew that the responsibility, that I was just a tool for the parents to use. And now I became, and with Laura, became the giver of faith, the transfer of faith. And man, I've got this picture of Kennedy's first couple hours of me holding her and looking at her, and I've got this smile on my face. But really what I'm thinking in my mind is, holy goodness, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And so there you go. So now this is my, y'all remember my lesson with marbles a few years ago and how many weeks we had left. I got a lot of negative feedback from that lesson. People didn't like that so much. Be reminded of how many weeks left they had with their kids. Lane, I think you're down to 1. Yeah? Yeah. Got a few others in your boat over here. Down just a few. And I remember taking this picture and posting it up on Instagram and thinking, this is a good reminder for me. You can go ahead and put the next picture up. That's what it is today. 52 weeks have passed. And I look at that picture and I think, okay, what did the last 52 weeks look like as far as my faith example to my kids? See, and for me, that is where my fear kicks in. See, because Satan, I believe, he tries to take the things that we see as there's just a little bit of truth to it. And he starts whispering in our ears that that's enough, or that that's who we are. All of our failures, all the things that we feel inept at, Satan makes that who we are. It's a whisper of truth that really tries to cut to the core of what we believe about ourselves. I believe Satan takes our insecurities and he puts them right between us and God. And those fears that we have, they make us feel a distance. They make us feel a distance between us and God. See, that wedge causes us to do things that might be out of our character. So we've got a bunch of people who face these fears. I'm going to say that not everybody raised their hand, but I'm going to say that everybody in here has those fears. Those fears whenever you go to work, can I get the job done? Those fears as a parent that I talked about. Those fears as a Christian. We all have these things that are inside us that Satan blows up. And see, the problem with Satan is, that's what I said this before, that's what he calls us. He calls us a liar. He calls us a cheater. He calls us fake. He calls us a hypocrite. And he uses other people to call us those things. And so at school, our kids, They get bombarded by people who bring out all of those insecurities, who bring out all of those fears. And that's what they start to believe about themselves. That they're not worthy of friends, that they're not worthy of the things that they might be achieving, that they're not worthy of love. That might seem like a drastic jump to take, but I have seen that path work in kids' hearts. They are called those things. They're being called by their sin instead of who they are. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, it says, "The God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ." Satan has used everything that he can to drive a wedge between God and us. And we allow him to do that. I'm thankful that we have a God who doesn't call us by our fears, but calls us by our name. It calls us by the Son that he gave up for us. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. Sow and Grow, is starting, is it the 5th year? Sow and Grow is starting their 5th year just after Labor Day. And got full host of teachers. Is that right? Yeah, you're all ready to go. That's good. I think Laura's actually the only one that's in here right now. Beata's upstairs on the 2nd floor, I believe. That's right. So, Jeff, is that right? Oh, Jeff's not in here anymore. So, but besides instead of just having Laura stand up, I would like all of our teachers to stand up. If you are teaching this year, I'd like all of our teachers to stand up. Yes, stand up. You don't have to come up here. No, just stand. Yeah, teachers, high school teachers, college teachers, everybody. Thank you very much. I know that we've got assistant principals and superintendents and aides and teachers. And, I was going to talk about Joe Shelley, but he's not here. He's a bus driver in the school district, and the kids feel fear whenever they walk onto his bus a little bit. But I love Joe. I love getting to spend time with him at camp. But I am so grateful for our teachers. I remember walking into my mother-in-law's classroom. She taught 3rd grade for I don't know how many years, 20 plus years, and she just retired. This is her first year not teaching, and I would walk into her classroom, and it was like the textbooks just exploded in her room. She had stuff covering every inch of the wall, from the ABCs to presidents to different words, and I don't know what all she had. I stopped looking. I couldn't handle it. And but she had so much that was up there because she wanted everywhere the kids looked to be a spot where they could learn a little bit more. And I know as a teacher, that's something I failed at because I hated bulletin boards. My wife would walk into my classroom and be like, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Your kids are going to be so bored in here." No, it's just how it's how I worked. I tried to get them to learn in other areas. But thank you. But I wonder what that's like. Whenever I think of our teachers at school, their job is to transfer their knowledge of a subject or their love of a subject to their students. Not only that, I believe a teacher's primary job also is to show care and concern and love for their students as well, because not all of them receive that love when they go home. And there's so many things that they have to take into effect. Are these kids eating when they get home? Is there any time for them to do any homework? Is it a safe environment? And all of these things are going in to our teachers' mindset as they prepare their class for their students. Deuteronomy 6, what Rob just read, Deuteronomy 6, starting in verse 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, those are verses that I think about often when I think of not just teaching, but parenting. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. They're trying to get across the idea that this is important and this is difficult. This is not something that comes easy. Passing along faith. I mean, passing along math skills is difficult enough. And teaching to read and to write. We're talking about faith. You know, and parents, as you send your kids off to school, what is it that you're doing to help separate your kids, to help remind them of the love that they have set for them, that they don't have to work for at all, that they don't have to try to impress? Church, what are you doing to remind these kids and these families that they are loved and that they are wanted and that they are called by name by a God that has given everything for them? You know, I think of where our parents are at that are getting ready to send their kids to college. And every year as we see seniors graduate and as we look forward to them in school, whether it's here or away, I think about what it's going to be like for me as I send my kids away. And the thought that keeps coming through my mind is I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to send them away, and I know my kids are going to know that I love them. I know that they're going to know that I love them. But are they going to know that they have got a God that loves them without end? Not only that, but are they going to be disciples of Christ? See, my concern isn't just that they know that there is a God, but that they want to serve that God and they want to tell others about that God. When they leave my house, that's my prayer for them. And that doesn't start senior year. See all these kids that are starting, you know, whenever we do baby dedication, in just a few weeks or just a few months, we'll be doing baby dedication. As you know, my challenge for that always is that it begins then. It begins whenever the first time they bring their baby in these walls and introduces them to the church family. Are we taking up responsibility for that child as a church? Are we seeing them? Are we seeing him or her and saying we've got 18, 19, 20 years to pour into these kids? And parents, hopefully that is every day of your life. Through the frustrations, through the not wanting to wake up, through the talking back, through the not wanting to do homework, through the arguments, through everything. Things you wouldn't do. And has anybody in here as a parent turned into their parent that they said they never would? I have. The things that I've said to my kids are things that I told myself I would never do that my dad did to me. We do everything that we can. We love our kids, and as teachers of the faith, as teachers of God's Word, this has to be something that is constant. If we wait for Sunday morning to teach our kids about the truth, they're not going to see it as important. If we wait for Sunday mornings to pray with our kids, or Or just at dinner time, praying with our kids. We're missing the point. We have missed the point. The passing along of our faith is something that is every day, is every hour, is every minute that we're with our kids, because they see us. It goes for those of you, Matt comes over to our house often. Matt does not have kids, but he's an uncle to our kids. He's over at our house and our kids love him, but our kids see him. And we want Matt over at our house because they see Jesus in him. I've loved that for Kennedy this summer with the youth group. We want people over to our house that are going to show people, that are going to show our kids what it's like to have a life with Jesus, what it's like to live for Jesus. See, because our kids, not just ours, but all of our kids, they see fake. And so whenever they see your faith just living on Sunday mornings, they see that. I'm not trying to put us on a guilt trip. I'm trying to remind us that this is important. They didn't write these words in Deuteronomy 6 just as a whim, on a whim. These are instructions for our lives, for raising our children. There are times in all of our lives where we have that, they call it a borrowed faith, where we have faith because that's what we've always done. I am thankful for my borrowed faith. Ian and kids his age, even Ann's, kids that are that young, they live on a borrowed faith. They live for those stories in the Bible. And sometimes as adults, we rely on that borrowed faith that we have. Maybe it's those people that are around us that can lift us up because we just don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. We rely on our friend's faith for a moment. But we cannot stay at a borrowed faith. We must move to an owned faith. We must move to, we need to be moving, progressing towards a faith that can show others about Christ, that can teach others about Christ, and hopefully can be an example to the kids here about Christ. We have a God that gave everything for us. And all the things that I just talked about, it seems so easy to drift into what I was talking about first in fear. Fear that we're not doing enough. Fear that we have already lost the battle. And that's the last thing that I want to do today. Fear is just one of Satan's designs to capture us and to draw us down. The path to victory in this warfare is to hold fast. The path to victory is to remember who is king. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 8, it says, "The Son of God appeared to destroy the works of the devil." In Hebrews 2, verse 14, it says, "Christ took on human nature, that through death he might destroy him who has the power of death, that is the devil." Colossians 2, verse 15 says, "God disarmed the principalities and powers and made a public example of them, triumphing over them in him." In other words, the decisive blow to Satan was struck at Calvary. See, the New Testament highlights prayer as the pervasive accompaniment to every battle. It's prayer. Think about Satan, or think about Jesus, rather, before going to the cross. John chapter 17. His prayer for the believers then, his prayer for us. now. In Ephesians 6:17 and 18, it says, take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit, with all prayer and supplication. We have a battle that is before us. And it's a battle for the hearts of our kids. It's a battle for the hearts of each one of us. And it is a battle that we should not take lightly. But it's a battle that God has won. It's a battle that we need to submit to God and realize that, as I said before, it says in Isaiah 43:1 that God has called us by name, and He knows you. We have nothing to fear. We make things up to fear sometimes, and we have an opponent in Satan who tries to drive that wedge between us and God. But Jesus is there.